Everybody, this video is going to teach you how to draw angles in what they call standard position on a graph. This is how we're going to figure out where our triangle is so that we can find the sine, cosine, and tangent of angles that they give us from the 30, 60, 90 or the 45, 45, 90 triangle. So I went over this a little bit in class, but you start here on the positive side of the x-axis, and if you go counterclockwise, those angles are positive, so that's the direction that we're going to fill this out. Obviously, if we had a negative angle, we would do the same thing, but kind of going in the opposite direction, so everything would be kind of flipped upside down. So quadrant 1 is from 0 degrees to 90 degrees. Quadrant 2 is 90 degrees to 180. Quadrant 3 is 180 to 270, and then quadrant 4 is from 270 back up to 360 degrees. So all of the triangles in the first quadrant, those are just going to be your normal 30, 60, 90 triangle. So your triangle would be positioned like that. All of the triangles that you make should have one of the legs on the x-axis. So in quadrant 2, the triangle that you make would have to look like that. The angle that you would be given would be an angle that's between 90 and 180 degrees. So this quadrant 1 is kind of going to get drawn on a lot. But for example, if this was 120 degrees, then the angle that I would be using in my triangle would be 60 degrees. So when your angle lands in quadrant 2, to get the angle of your triangle, you should be doing 180 minus your angle. All right, in quadrant 3, again, your triangle should have a leg on the x-axis. So this is what your triangle will end up looking like in quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 will be all the angles between 180 and 270. So I think one of the examples that we did in class was 225. So that whole entire angle might be 225 degrees, but the angle that I'm using is the angle minus 180. Because basically in quadrant 3, we have this entire top half, that semicircle from 0 to 180 that we're not using. So that third quadrant, you just subtract from 180. All right, and then in the fourth quadrant, your triangle should be drawn like this. And in the fourth quadrant, we have almost completed the entire circle. If you notice, I'm almost all the way up to 360. So what I do to find the angle in this quadrant is I do 360 minus the angle that they gave me. All right, so a couple of other things to remember with these triangles. And I'm just going to kind of draw them again, just so where you have a little bit less. In the first quadrant, everything is positive in the first quadrant. Quadrant 2, you do have a negative leg and a positive leg. Quadrant 3, you have both of your legs are negative. And in quadrant 4, you have this one is positive, this one is negative. So that's going to affect whether your sine, cosine, and tangent comes out to be positive or negative, depending on which quadrant it's in. All right, and that should pretty much cover it. So tomorrow in class, you're gonna have to start the entire process by yourself. I'll help you obviously, but the question is just gonna say, find the sine of 120 degrees. And so you're gonna have to know where 120 degree is. You're gonna have to know what that triangle looks like. You're gonna have to be able to find the angle that's inside the triangle, and then use the 30-60-90 or the 45-45-90 rule to set up your problem.